This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
How does one go from being an expert in dog training to CEO of a Christian media ministry? Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. That is the subject of conversation here with our guest. Actually, the first guest we've had in the barn since we have opened here, and we wanted to make sure that Joe was our first guest. He has taken over as the CEO of SkyWatch TV. He is the host of the program, an author, and also an expert in holistic health, natural health. We'll talk about that as well. Joe Ardis Horn. Joe, thanks for coming out and joining us.
I'm so glad to be here, brother.
This is, it's been an interesting journey these last 10 years. It was fall of 2014, so it'll be fall of 2014 since we came out here to talk with you, your dad, your family about partnering in SkyWatch TV. And in fact, you're the one who kind of spilled the beans. Your dad didn't even tell us what the mission of of Whispering Ponies Ranch was going to be.
If it had happened even probably 2 years later, he probably would have. But back then it was still, you remember this because you and Sharon and I went on a tour.
Right.
We took an ATV out into the woods. I was just playing the role of host.
Yeah.
The Gilberts are here. My dad's doing something with him. He's building something.
And he and your mom had to go to the Strategic Perspectives Conference, Chuck Missler's conference up in Coeur d'Alene. And so he left you as, our chaperone.
Yeah, and it was great
I remember
fun.
very clearly because we're driving in the ATV and you said, over there's where the zip line's going to be. And we're going to, zip lines? What?
Yeah, so the Gilberts had no idea about this place called Whispering Ponies Ranch.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of it. It wasn't a part of my dad's talking points. It was all about the potential of getting you here to help him with SkyWatch TV.
Yeah.
Which, man, in 2013, 14, it was still like an embryo. It was mostly just an idea and a hope and a roll of the dice. Will people receive this? And kind of a response to his inability to get books that he was publishing at Defender on other people's programs. That actually, for your viewers that don't know why SkyWatch actually started, it was originally a reaction to my dad saying, I got to build a TV show too, I guess, because he would submit these books to other outlets, to big programs, televised programs.
Right.
You're talking about politics and, things that are outside of the echo chamber. This is not like inspirational 10 steps of faith. Probably too hot for TV.
Yeah.
We got to do it ourselves.
Giants?
Giants and the Nephilim and UFOs. Ezekiel's wheel and Genesis and the book of Revelation's dissected. It did not fit the inspirational hour with brother so and so. He's like, we're going to have to start a TV show.
Yeah.
And
while this was going on, Sharon and I had. We first met you back in 2011 at the Supernatural Science and Prophecy Conference.
I remember that night, yeah.
Tom Dunn and the late Russ Dizdar had put that together back in, it was Akron, Ohio. Mm-hmm. Canton, Ohio.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
And we had been podcasting for, about 5 years at that point through PID Radio, Appearing into Darkness, which we are still doing. We are like... A fellow interviewed me on his podcast the other day. It's the godfather of Christian podcasting. Like, really?
I want to jump in.
I'm like the OG, I guess.
No, I want to jump in on this. So as God is my witness, the first time I heard the word podcast was my dad referencing this couple that he had met called the Gilberts. To me, at that point, you guys were just a name. It was the Gilberts and something having to do with a podcast. And I remember asking him, a what cast?
Yeah.
And it's radio, right? Because I'm thinking Art Bell, Rush Limbaugh, AM radio. What do you mean what is this? My first impression of the internet was like 1996. It was only a few years after that people started sorting out podcasts.
Yeah,
so I don't know how early it was late
2004 when the code was developed. Adam Curry, former MTV VJ, and a fellow named Dave Weiner developed the code. And I remember this distinctly. In October of 2004, they developed the code. And we started podcasting March 6th of 2005 was our first episode. And it was to tell people why they should buy our novels. And then it's like, okay, well, that's one episode. What do we do next?
Now what, right?
Yeah, so that's when we started, let's explain the reasons we write. But yeah, I mean, younger viewers, you might not even know there was this thing back in the day called the iPod. That has already come and gone and is no longer around.
But to
But
finish,
that's where the name came from, podcast.
to finish my point and to bring to the center of what I was getting at is that you being referred to by this other gentleman as the godfather of Christian podcast, that was always how my father felt of you and Sharon both. And that's why when Sharon's on the SkyWatch television program, I always make sure I inform our audience that she's a legend and pioneer in Christian radio. Both of you guys.
Well,
really.
She actually saw the value in podcasting and using the internet to get the message out before I did, because I'm an old radio guy. I got into radio back in 1980.
Right.
We've got friends who like to tell people, yeah, Derek's radio career began the year I was born. Your introduction, your career spans 40 years, which is how do you say he's old without saying that he's old? But that was, it's true. And I just had this idea that we had to be on a terrestrial radio station to be actually doing something. And so we experimented for a bit on one of the Patriot radio networks out there, the ones that are, and they wanted us to pay to be on the program.
Sure.
It's like, no, we'll just continue doing it. But Sharon's like, why do you need, when you're on the internet, you're already syndicated around the world.
Right.
And it took a while for that to sink into my, thick head, but she's right. And here we are. And it's what we're doing with this program. I mean, if you're watching this or listening to this, it's because of the internet. We're not putting it out over a transmitter and beaming it out over the airwaves.
Right.
And there is a revolution that is now caught up to Christian broadcasting in general. And I know that, and we'll talk about this here in just a little bit, but it's affecting everything. SkyWatch TV is being affected by it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that whole thing of feeling like I needed to make a change, because while we had started down this path of podcasting and been invited to a couple of conferences, including your dad inviting us to the first Branson Future Congress to interview people for our podcast, and then Gary Stearman and Bob Ulrich now at Prophecy Watchers invited us to their conference to do the same thing, and they got the bright idea to put a camera in the room, which then allowed them to create DVD extras, interviews outside of the presentations. That led to us being invited to speak at conferences. And meanwhile, I'm selling steel Monday through Friday and thinking there's got to be something else to do. And I was getting increasingly frustrated, even though we were paid well and treated well. Sharon said, speak to some wise brothers in the Lord who can give you some guidance and counsel. And your dad was one of the folks I talked to. He's like, well, might be something in the works. And then come that October of 2014, he invited us out and asked Sharon to be a guest on one of the pilot episodes of what became SkyWatch TV. So,
I have a memory, and I'll share it because it's one that stands out to me as the de facto first time my father watched you host SkyWatch TV. So I'll refresh your memory and inform your audience, because I know they don't know and you might not remember. But you had come down and you were going to watch. You had decided that you were going to accept this partnership with my father and come to work for SkyWatch TV. And I don't remember the details about when you were going to start hosting. At the time, Gary Stearman was kind of realizing that to do that and Prophecy Watchers and to go back and forth from Oklahoma back and forth, the idea that Gary Stearman, who was the original host of SkyWatch the TV program, we needed to do something to help Gary focus more on Prophecy Watchers. Remember that whole thing where
right.
we were going to have two studios in this, and we're going to turn the cameras around. One of them looks different. Do you remember any of that?
Vaguely. Yeah.
This is like 2012. We're having these talks, and they're driving down, and we're looking at studios and stuff. Anyway, so I'm just history lesson. So Gary Stearman was the original host of SkyWatch TV. He made it about 6 or 7 episodes, and it was really obvious that it was too much for him to.
And he was still pastoring a church in Oklahoma City at the time.
Yeah, and that was right at the time too, where he had started some health challenge. It was just too much. So the first person on the planet that my dad thought, the only other guy I know that could do this job would be Derek Gilbert. And that was when he reached out to you, and you guys talked, and I'm, like you said, I'm off trying to train dogs, and I've got this whole other world happening. So a lot of this at the time is just my father talking to the couple called the Gilberts, and I had met you once, and I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but I had also even recommended to my father that he not do this SkyWatch television thing, which is another thing that your viewers probably don't have a clue about. But if you understand context, it wasn't because I didn't believe in the ministry angle of it. I thought, basically in a nutshell, Dad, you've talked for a decade about making sure mom's okay if something happens to you. And now you want to invest this giant nest egg into a total experiment called network TV. We don't have a clue what we're doing. You know, what if 2 years later you decide this is too much? You're going to have, and I told him, you're going to have 50 people working for you, ringing your phone off the hook. You're going to end up with a retired Walmart building. This is funny because we ended up, this almost became like prophetically so, right? I just didn't realize at the time it'd be my phone in the long run. But we ended up with a retired grocery store. I mean, almost everything I said, just tongue in cheek, came, you know, God has a sense of humor. It worked out. But the first time I saw Derek Gilbert host was actually supposed to be Dead Pets Don't Lie in 2015. Donna Howell and I had put out the book Dead Pets Don't Lie. And it was our first interview on the set. We were both nervous. And so we thought my dad could kind of softball us the questions, right? We'd never done a show like this before. And my dad, it was the weirdest thing ever to be in the room because, you know, Tom as almost a master orator, right? He doesn't get tripped up in his words or his thoughts. He does great television. He's a good communicator. It's one of the reasons his books have been so viral so many times. He gets up though, and he had never tried to host before. And he learned in about 10 seconds that hosting is a completely different role than being interviewed.
Yeah.
The psychology, the timing, the cadence, you're waiting for the guest, moments where you think you maybe nudged them to keep in keeping with the time, and here comes the break, and then you've got to make sure you go to the pit. It's not, if it looks easy, it's because you're surrounded by a great team that's helping you. I'll just put it that way. So he got up there, and welcome to SkyWatch TV, folks. Today we're going to be talking about, hang on, I didn't like that. Welcome to SkyWatch TV, folks. Today, no, I'm not going to do that. He gave like 4 of these quick little dry runs. Did not like any of it. He stands up from the news desk. You remember this now? Is this ringing a bell now? Derek is sitting there watching because he's just being introduced to the studio. This was not supposed to be Derek starts work that day. And my dad goes, no, Derek, how about you do it? And Derek, you may not remember this, but he had a coat. He'd brought a coat. I think you might have been wearing jeans, but it didn't matter because the camera started here.
It's below the desk, stays below the desk. Yeah.
Derek puts on his father's cufflinks. Do you remember this?
I do.
This is a memory that's lasered in. It was so many wonderful, beautiful. I didn't mean to get to you with this. I'm just sharing what happened. But he's putting his father's cufflinks on, and you said something about how special they were to you. You walked over and you sat down at the news desk, and with no prep at all. By the way, Derek, this is about pet food, and here's the industry, and here's the questions. Okay, here we go. And he starts out with this introduction. Off the top of his head, go back and find the Dead Pets Don't Lie series. None of this was planned this way. And you one-shot the entire 4 series. You made Donna and I feel like everything we needed to say got up on the scoreboard. You put us at ease with your talent and your skills. And when it was done, my dad said this. He said, that's why I'm not doing TV, because Derek Gilbert does perfect TV. I'm just sharing this stuff because I've never told you that whole story, and I'm taking the occasion to tell you and your audience. But I don't know. If I were listening and loved Derek Gilbert and or Tom Horn, that would be an interesting bit of history.
Yeah, until you mentioned the cufflinks, I'd kind of forgotten about that because, you know, it's just like, well, it's what you do. You know, the Lord, I think, created us and trained us for what we are doing, and you don't really recognize the training until it's in the rearview mirror. You know, why did I go through the radio career and have such difficulty at these points? You know, it's because that was not the ultimate goal, but these skills developed in the training was part of that, which then leads to this question: how is it that you went from pursuing a career as a dog trainer to the point where you actually put out a DVD on a dog training method. You were working with dogs on a regular basis, dogs with problems, with behavioral issues and so forth, to coming into this vision that your father had. And how did learning to master dog behavior prepare you for what you're doing now?
Well, for the record, I don't say of myself that I ever mastered the dog behavior thing, because as soon as you think you've got it all sorted, you'll meet a new dog that puzzles you, and you're like, well, now this worked 50 times. Why is this, bio-individuality? Yeah. It's the same with health. Yeah. There's not a one-size-fit-all protocol for everyone's health. Some people need to make adjustments. And so having said that, I was deep into what was a full career doing the dog training thing. And in 2014, SkyWatch very much was my father's pet project. And I was just trying to help him edit. I kept looking for a replacement. Somebody would come, you remember this, because I would tell Derek, hey, things are going to change pretty soon, Derek, I'll be out, and then there's this new editor that's coming, and he's going to take over the show. And we continued to kind of go through editors. My dad, all the while, for the record, never ever making me feel like I couldn't pursue my career or live my dream, or, hey, son, I really need you to come look over the family TV program. None of that. It was always just, God's in control, go live your life, love you, proud of you. Like, it was more me he was detached from the realities of what it took to run the studio end of things. And you were there. And you would go through these editors. And I just didn't feel like I could fully step away without somebody there absorbing what was going to be surprising in terms of the gravity of all the responsibilities and stuff. And I just didn't. I didn't want it to land on you or any of the other folks that were down there trying to help. And so I didn't feel a release. Is probably the simplest way of saying I did not feel a release, and I wanted a release. God, I'm trusting you in this season. You know where my heart is. You know where my wants are. You know what I've worked so hard to build with this dog training thing. And I was taking, just to give your viewers a snapshot, I was taking on Monday through Friday, usually at least 1 to 5 dogs a week in the week nights. Now, sometimes it'd be 2 dogs in the same household, but that means that, way more than a family goes to church on a Wednesday. This was like perpetually draining, because I'm working my full-time job for SkyWatch and then I'm training dogs in the evenings. That then turned into, well, I can't fit you in. I have to do Saturday. Just word of mouth. Then my friend who was the man in Branson, Darren Papas, he was a mentor to me. He was a hero to me. Still love the guy. But he was fabulous. He was called the Branson Dog Guy. And he had built over a decade this giant client base of dogs. And one day he calls me and he says, Joe, my daughter and I, she's living in California. I'm moving. But I tell you what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to hand you my entire Rolodex. And I was like, God, is this you trying to tell me I'm never going to have time for SkyWatch ever again to do this thing I've wanted to do for so long? He just dropped it off in my lap. You're the guy, he said. You're the only one out here that I feel I can just tell all my clients to go see. And I had done some training with Darren. We'd worked together. And long story short, because I don't know how much of this is going to be fascinating to your viewers, but I ended up absolutely killing myself to keep my SkyWatch TV job. Yeah. And also run this full-time, crazy. And people should know at the same time that you've also got a wife and 4 children. Yes. And you're trying to fit them into the cracks between the SkyWatch TV responsibilities and your clients. Yeah, well, back then it would have been a wife and 2 children. But eventually 4. Yeah. And it's the same principle of me wanting to also be a dad and a husband and do right by God and keep my household in order and all the things. Long story short, my good friend Debbie Short, who I've talked about many times, and Sharon is off camera nodding because she's met Debbie. And Debbie has a gift, and certainly God has used her in our lives to bring perspective numerous times. And I was talking to her on the phone one day, and I said, Debbie, I don't know what to do. I've got this career. I can't tell if God has just dropped it off in my lap. Here, man, that should be obvious. It's a full-time. This is your dream. but I did not have a peace. And it was also starting to wear me out for other reasons because I didn't have a release. I just spiritually felt kind of one leg is in one camp, one's in the other, and I was trying to do it all, and I was wore completely out. And Debbie said, Joe, as I hear you talk, I am seeing a marlin. And she goes into this deep sea fishing thing. Okay. And she says, in fishing, a marlin is one of the most prized catches to the fishermen. Mm-hmm. But they're very rare, they're very difficult, and they put up a long fight. So for those that have them on the wall or whatever as a trophy or a prize, they've really worked for it. And she said, not to get into the ethics of fishing or putting a fish on a wall, but just metaphorically speaking, she said, as you're talking, I see God like warring with you to get you to see what he's asking you to do, to surrender, to give up the things that you want and that you feel are things you've worked so hard for. I feel like you need to take this next level, really pound the gates of heaven and ask him for clarity. And as soon as we had that conversation, I started letting my clients know that I was unavailable. And I started trying to responsibly wean them from a dependency from me. I tried to turn them over to this other individual who was, hit and miss. And I ultimately think some of these clients just did not end up with solutions. But I then went in like 2015 hard into SkyWatch. I just, Lord, I'm giving you every morsel of who I am. Much of the plan at that time still didn't make any sense to me at all. But spiritually speaking, with my blindfold on, I just, Lord, what would you have me do? The only thing I felt, it didn't have to make sense that I felt he was saying, this is it, was to just go all in on SkyWatch. And so, my wife and I, we it's a long story, but we made every move and counter move we could to be available to all the things SkyWatch. And I had no idea at the time, other than to just sense it was very important to make sure I was attached, that we'd be sitting here today post my father, and to look at where the ministry might be if we had not been obedient at the time to just go all in. Mm. And that's not to say I have a Messiah complex or that it would implode were I not here, or anything like that. But just where we're at today, you can't be where we're at without going back years ago and start building towards this moment.
Right.
So that's the shortest version I can give you. But
the influence of Catherine behind the scenes is really something I don't think most viewers appreciate. She has been instrumental in setting up the store, which provides the funding for not just SkyWatch TV, but the reason SkyWatch TV exists is to finance the work at Whispering Ponies Ranch. Mm-hmm. But she has also taken a step out now in hosting a new program that SkyWatch TV has featured the last couple of years, mm-hmm. And that is now taking a different direction. The Simply His coffee shop. Mm-hmm. This is a different type of program from what SkyWatch TV has become known for. What is Simply His for viewers not familiar with it, and how does it complement what SkyWatch TV puts out?
It started off years ago. Allie Anderson, Donna Howell, those are both my siblings. My mother, Nita Horn, mm-hmm. who now is like post-founding WPR, Whispering Ponies Ranch, and she's in the season of life a few years ago where she's asking God, now what? What else can we add to the ministry? And one of the things, and my wife was integral to these conversations, well, the four of them started attending women conferences to go next level. Let's go, let's be a part of the atmosphere of worship. Let's really dig deep and ask God what else. They felt like he was getting ready to nudge them to another layer of ministry. And so I'm collapsing this, but following one of, I want to say it was women of, my wife would know, but the Women of Influence conference, I think, something to that effect was in 2020, and they attended this thing, or no, it would have been 2019, I think,
right,
because this
lockdown.
Pre-COVID lockdowns, yeah. And anyway, they all left feeling, this is a collapsed version, but they all left feeling like God wanted them to resume something they had started over 20 years ago, or 2005. So, 17 years ago, 16 years ago at the time. And it was the Women of Raiders. And they had done like 2 or 3 podcasts, and the ladies right away responsive to it. But to make a long story short, the structure of our lives, also owning a food catering company at the time, it just no chance. Was this going to survive? No one had the time. It was brutal. We were working like till 11 o'clock at night trying to do podcast. It was just brutal. So they felt like, spiritually, it's a great idea. The timing is off. And the timing would not become on until about 4 years ago. And they just felt like it was time to really kind of lean into the women. We have a lot of women that watch SkyWatch television who also appreciate, in addition to Bible prophecy, things that are dealt with that have to do with grandmothering and being moms and dealing with holidays and not to frame it at all like it's a superficial program, but the lighter side of just being women and doing life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where SkyWatch, the flagship program, tends to be really heavy a lot. We're dealing with politics, prophecy, the supernatural, what's happening with the Biden administration, what might happen later this year politically, that kind of stuff. Mark of the beast, digital technology, big tech censorship, where AI is moving us towards, a cataclysmic moment where what we think is going to be beneficial and serve us may end up being unintentionally a new form of master-slave relationship where we are now dependent on technology for our own survival. That's the SkyWatch flagship show. To kind of step away from some of that and do a program for women that's almost more nourishing to the souls of a woman, to have a cup of coffee and to talk about faith and what happens when trouble comes knocking. And what do you do in these valleys of decision making? And like you said, my wife probably less visible on the flagship show, so people may not know this about her, but she is the salt in the middle of all SkyWatch that makes the back end. I couldn't do what she's doing. From the bookstore that she was absolutely instrumental in building, to the continued maintenance of all the technology and whether the shopping cart is batching and whether a person places an order and it gets shipped right away. Like it's just, I cannot have this be my life, right? This is what she's doing. In addition to producing the Simply His Coffee Shop program, in addition to being a mom and busing one of our children to dance and volleyball and doing the school thing. And so I've done everything I can to support her, give her moments that are just for herself where she can sit there and veg out for a minute and recoup. But I don't always feel like she gets those adequate windows. She's a very hardworking person.
Yeah. And I will say this, it's difficult to consume content while you're producing content, so I can't say I've watched many of the episodes, but those that I've seen, the women of Simply His are deep thinkers. So this is not like The View, a Christianized view.
Right.
This is some really deep thoughts on how to do life as a Christian woman, and I think we, as Christians, need to recognize, as God created us from the beginning, male and female, we've got different roles to play. The world would tell us that it doesn't really matter. We're interchangeable parts, like potato head dolls, where you can just swap not only roles but parts and genders. And that is not how we were created or designed. And I think we are happiest when we fit into our roles. And how we do it is going to differ, as you say, how is it?
Bio-individuality.
Bio-individuality, I like that. Because we are all different. I mean, what it means for me to be a man is not necessarily the same as what it means for you to be a man. I don't have as many guns, for example. But that there is still a difference between how we act in the roles as fathers and husbands, brothers, than a woman would act as a mother, a sister, a wife. And that is as it should be. There is not one that is better than the other. That is just how the design was envisioned and put into place by God. And so it is good that there are, I think, essential. There are programs like Simply His out there to complement. And quite frankly, something Sharon and I have talked about for many years, that would be wonderful if we could ever find the time to do something similar where me, you, Dakota, John, sit down and do something, for men.
Right.
That doesn't have to involve, cigars and cold drinks, but, there are
pizza
ministries
and football, all the standard stigmas that get attached to man time, right?
Right, yeah. The older I get, sadly, the less important football becomes.
My goodness.
The future of SkyWatch TV, we kind of touched on this earlier on, how broadcasting has changed. And I can speak to this with some inside knowledge, having been in professional secular broadcasting from 1980 through about 92, and then again in 2006 and 7, where I was on the radio. I don't know how many of our viewers know this, but I was actually offered an opportunity back in 1997. Is that right? No, 87. 1987, when QVC, the shopping network, was being set up in Philadelphia. I was on the air at a top 40 station there, and I was offered an opportunity to become one of their first on-air hosts. And I turned it down because they wouldn't let me keep my radio job. So anyway, that could have been me, pitching the kitchen devices.
You could have been Casey Kasem, like 2.0.
Yeah, well, Casey Kasem or David Venable for people who watch QVC, who's just celebrating 30 years with the channel.
Oh my.
God bless him. But I think it would have been like Pat Sajak after a while, who once described hosting the Prices, or what is it, Wheel of Fortune, as hearing his brain cells flake off and hit the floor. But broadcasting has changed a lot, where it used to be you had 3 networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, you had PBS, and a few independent TV stations here and there. Radio was what it was, and now the internet has changed all of that.
Yeah.
And the cost, just the physical expense of broadcasting a signal, I mean, the electricity alone for a transmitter, a 50,000 watt or 100,000 watt radio transmitter, television transmitter, the cost of maintaining a tower.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew some of the engineers back in the day that had to literally climb the towers in the middle of ice to try to de-ice things so that broadcast would continue. Whereas now with the internet, if you've got a decent internet connection, which most of us do anymore, even here in rural America, you are syndicated globally. How is this affecting SkyWatch TV going forward with the changes that are taking place with Christian broadcasting television?
I wish that I could tell you conclusively that we're kind of looking back at this chapter that we're in right now retroactively, like in a decade, if the Lord tarries and we're still here, and tell you exactly how we ended up navigating it, so I could steal that information, go back and apply it right now. Because the truth is, we're in a dichotomy, because it's not fully yet that all media is distributed through the internet, through podcasts, through platforms like Roku, YouTube, Rumble, Vimeo, TikTok, Facebook. It's not that all of the information is being distributed that way, but a lot of it is. And so we're in this dichotomy where, were I to pull, for example, with the astronomical cost of network television to be there, that means, the old school people are watching us, they're setting their DVR, they're recording the program, maybe they catch us live on cable, whatever. The old way, I say old, like 10 years ago, way that people watched almost everything. I mean, people were still selling cable with package deals 10 years ago.
Right.
Those industries have had to either completely reinvent themselves and include some kind of a paid-for, internet-based subscription, or they're gone, right? But we're not exactly and completely in a position where, were I to pull all of our networks, because I rationalize this every single day right now, looking at the cost of being present. And I don't want to name networks specifically because some of them are dear friends of ours. We're hoping that they succeed, and their reach is still significant, which adds to the dichotomy here. But it is my view that they may be failing over time. But were I to pull my program, and I could rationalize this because we have friends in media right now. They're not on paid-for network television. Yeah, they're getting millions and millions of views and plays. They're making generational wealth that they have almost no overhead. They just create content, and they have these paywalls set up for $10 a month. You can be a part of our platform, the whatever club, and for $3 a month. They're doing advertisements where they're selling somebody else's product, which, being a non-for-profit and a Christian ministry, my hands are tied to a lot of those avenues. Right. So I can't pitch an external product, even if I love it, like the timeless value of silver and gold. We've foregone a fortune of opportunity to seize that momentum this last year and to get our hands on an opportunity to have appealed to people's need for the timeless value of silver and gold, with all this question around digital dollar and the currency maybe eroding and the value of the US dollar, and done it to have robustly supported Whispering Ponies Ranch and these other non-for-profit, but because I can't speak to the spiritual values of said company, because this is another a for-profit business that may or may not support religious ideologies that our viewers would then go discover and then be upset about. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We as a non-for-profit ministry, I can't sell you action figures or somebody else's movies, and that's a lot of what you see people online doing. They're making it's the money hand over fist is ridiculous. We have stayed in the stream of, Lord, what would you have us do, even if it means it costs us a fortune, so that we don't lose our ability to underwrite what we're doing at Whispering Ponies Ranch and SkyWatch TV, mm-hmm. and not compromise to some of these money streams, our values, or even to attach ourselves in terms of brand equity to some of these other for-profit opportunities that you see people online endeavoring. And I know I'm talking a little bit vague because I don't want to hurt anyone.
Right.
So you have to follow me on this. We're in this dichotomy where network television costs an astronomical amount of money. And I could rationalize just severing that from SkyWatch TV, going straight to all the four free platforms, and probably just with the viral ability of what people are already doing and participating, probably underwrite much of what we're doing as a ministry. But here's what would happen. The thousands and thousands of people watching us in homes where they're being cared for, that don't have an interest or the finances to support an internet-based subscription. Mm-hmm. So I'm talking about a lot of our senior citizens,
right,
that love and pray for our ministry, that are only able to watch it on their cable, mm-hmm. on local television, cable to local to them, exclusive to them, during the hour that it plays once a week. And every time I picture them being unable to get that access to SkyWatch TV, and we get emails all the time. Cable is the only place I can watch you. Yep. It means the world to me. Your ministry it's meant so much to my sense of encouragement or being able to analyze the times we're living in. In order to chop the syndicated networks off, I'd have to, at this juncture, make peace with the fact that a giant swath of our supporters at Whispering Ponies Ranch and viewers and out of the country, places where they restrict access to the internet, but go figure, have access to cable channels that are replaying the program, I'd have to just guillotine them from the equation. So I don't know if that was way too much information or if it was the answer to the question you were asking.
No, it sounds like we're in
it's convoluted, and there's a ton of overlap. Yeah. But we're still in the middle of that transition,
right?
Where until I can point to something that says, okay, we no longer have to pay for network TV, but I also don't have to ostracize or lose these people that love the show. So it's impossible at this point. We're just doing the absolute best we can to kind of pacify all the needs, but there's a lot of restrictions.
I will say this, and I know this because I had to set it up for SkyWatch TV, and Sharon and I use it for what you're watching right now, whether you're watching this on our app, which we encourage you to get, or Roku or Apple TV. Soon, by the way, we can announce that it will be available on Fire TV and Google TV, as well as the developer at Subsplash are working on getting those apps out within the next few weeks. SkyWatch TV likewise will be available on Amazon Fire TV finally. We've got Fire Sticks, love Amazon Fire TV, love Roku. Apple TV, a little expensive yet, but if you've got one, we're there, as is SkyWatch TV. But I will tell you that the cost through the developer that has developed the app for SkyWatch TV and for Gilbert House Ministries, as well as a number of our friends, Prophecy Watchers, the PTL Network, and so on, Subsplash, used by many, many Christian media ministries. The monthly expense to be syndicated through Roku, Apple TV, Google TV, Fire TV soon, and of course through the app itself, is less than it would cost for one 30-minute segment on a local television station. Forget about one of the big networks
forget it.
TBN or Daystar or anything like that. And that's the monthly expense to go worldwide. And this is what Joe is talking about when you're talking about the expense and the difference between paying to be on a network that is carried on Dish or DirecTV or a local cable system, I just had an exchange via email with a senior whose local cable system just dropped the network that was carrying the Jim Bakker show. And she knew that we are, friends with the Bakker family and wanted to know what was going on with that. And I said, I don't know. I don't know. But I know that for them, for many of the other Christian media ministries out there, of which SkyWatch TV is not even one of the biggest, this is really a time of transition, as you say, where syndicating through tools like Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV is much more cost effective. But there is, as you say, a large segment of the audience that was not raised with internet, was not raised with this technology, and is still looking for the program on cable,
right,
and will DVR it, and record those programs for later viewing if they're not available. But that is still how they're consuming it. So we are in a time of transition, and it will be interesting to see how things develop and shake out, because some of the free tools, as you mentioned, like the streaming video websites, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. Rumble seems to be the least inclined to censor or cancel, but you're not paying to be on that platform, so you never know when that day might come. Certainly, we've had our experiences with YouTube, SkyWatch TV in particular, but we also have had individual programs spiked for saying things that we didn't even say. So anyway, well, we're certainly entering a consequential period of time, and we look forward to seeing what the Lord brings, and happy to partner and fly alongside SkyWatch TV. Joe, we appreciate you, your family. You literally changed the course of our lives. And we are doing what God designed us to do. And it was because Tom Horn said yes. And so we are blessed to call you our friend, brother.
Well, and likewise, I want to continue to partner together, because I think we're stronger when we band together than we are to be jealous over viewerships, or who got some part of an audience that might have split off to see something the Gilberts were doing something. So people need to know that the Horns adore the Gilberts, and in every way we can, if there's ways that we can partner together to continue this symbiotic relationship. We love you guys. And you say I've altered the course of your life. I'm humbled by that comment. Obviously, God was the one that intercepted all of our directions. And now we might be looking at just a little snapshot of why.
Yeah.
If it were not for the Gilberts being obedient, coming to SkyWatch when you did, and to host so wonderfully, the way that you handled yourself on screen for those many, many years while I was out training dogs and telling my dad not to build any of this, we would not be sitting here today. So you and Sharon absolutely get to own a giant swath of where we were and where we came from.
Well, likewise, the Gilberts will always be fans and supporters of the Horns, and especially the mission at Whispering Ponies Ranch. And we highly encourage you to take a look at anything connected to Whispering Ponies Ranch. WhisperingPoniesRanch.com. SkyWatch TV exists to support the work there in changing the lives of children who desperately, desperately need the love of Christ, who need to know that there are adults who will cherish and protect them, not try to use them. So we are honored to be a part of this. This is what that's all about. Coming up, I'm going to tell you where we're going to be for the rest of 2024, at least as far as we know it now. And of course, yes, another example of how being liberal means never having to deal with cognitive dissonance. Bless their pointy little heads. That and more as A View from the Bunker continues. It's a new month, and we have a new special at the Gilbert House online store.
We have a crazy, crazy deal on all of our DVDs. They are, regardless of the retail price, they are 75% off.
We keep hearing from the kids these days that everything is going to streaming video, that DVDs are old school.
Oh, not for us.
No, we are old school. And besides, we don't trust the internet will always be there. So take advantage of this special offer. Everything from our travel-ogumentaries. Basically follow us as we go through the Holy Land and show you the important sites at ground zero on this supernatural war, plus video teachings, presentations, and much, much more.
You know, with 75% off savings on all the DVDs, as many as you want to get, you've got the money that you saved to go out and buy a DVD player.
That's it. Take advantage of it now, online only at the Gilbert House store, gilberthouse.org/store. And thank you for your prayers and support. Walking the walk every Sunday night from the beautiful Missouri Ozarks. This is A View from the Bunker, online at VFTB.net. Our web hub is gilberthouse.org. You'll find my personal website, DerekPGilbert.com. You'll also find us at a number of places on social media. Social media at X, formerly Twitter, at View from Bunker, or at Derek Gilbert, and that's Derek, by the way. Threads at Derek Gilbert. But the new social media sites, Truth Social, Gab Me We Get Her, Derek P. Gilbert. And again, if you are watching on YouTube, please take a moment, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and then if you would, just take an extra moment to guarantee we never get canceled, which is always a risk. We are finally, I think, outside of the window for a strike that was issued against us for something that was said on the program a couple of years ago. And then we just had another program that was just spiked altogether because of it was promoting harmful conspiracy theories. This goes back to 2019, an interview I did with Dr. Gregory Reed, who we will be seeing shortly, and I'll tell you about that also. But the bottom line is this. If you download our mobile app, which is available not just for iOS, Android, and Amazon Kindle Fire phones and tablets, it's available for Roku and Apple TV, and soon coming to Amazon Fire TV and Google TV as well. So those apps are in the works, but all of the others available at gilberthouse.org/app. Right now, you'll also find a link at VFTB.net. Another exciting announcement as we are finally rolling out Gilbert House Coffee. Tell you about that in just a couple of minutes. And also where you can see us and our good friend Dr. Gregory Reed, the guy who got us canceled almost, in just a couple of minutes as we lay out the schedule of conferences for the rest of this year. But first, this item, Billy Graham once said that if the Lord doesn't judge the United States, he owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology. And I think we've got more truth, more evidence that that is absolutely true. As yesterday, U.S. Capitol Police, as I'm recording this on Friday evening, Friday, February 2nd, Groundhog Day. So Thursday, February 1st, U.S. Capitol Police announced there would be no criminal charges for the men involved in the filming of an explicit porn video inside the Hart Senate office building, room 216 to be precise. A former aide to Maryland Senator Democrat Ben Cardin was called out on this a couple of months ago. They caught the porn scene filming himself, recording himself having sex with his male partner. I mean, and again, the genders of those involved really doesn't make any difference. I don't care. The fact is, this was explicit pornography filmed inside an official Senate office in the Hart Senate office building. They identified the men. They identified the room. One of the guys involved, again, former aide to Maryland Senator Ben Cardin, has since relieved of his duties. But and he tried to play the victim card. Hey, I'm the victim in all this. They're persecuting me because of who I love. No, we're persecuting you because you on company time, presumably, inside an office reserved for the workings of the government of the United States of America, filming explicit sex scenes, presumably to share through some online site. According to the column by law professor and scholar Jonathan Turley, it doesn't appear that the video site where the scene was shared is a moneymaker. Doesn't really have any relevance as far as I'm concerned, but according to the U.S. Capitol Police, while it appears to be in violation of congressional rules, they claim that there doesn't appear to be any law against it, so no charges will be filed.
Now, Turley says that's not entirely true. There are provisions in the U.S. Code that protect property of the United States government from willful depredation or attempted depredation, misuse of public money, property, and records, and so forth. But the Capitol Police have argued that this really doesn't matter. It's just personal purposes, no harm, no foul. So apparently you can film. According to U.S. Capitol Police, Congress now has legal sanction to be as obscene as they want to be because no charges will be filed. And yet, those who walked through the Capitol on January 6th respecting the velvet ropes and the Hall of Statues and all that, some of those folks spending as much as 20 years in prison. Once again, proof that being a liberal in these United States means never having to deal with cognitive dissonance. Bless their pointy little heads. Well, we have got a calendar that is filling up for this year, and actually want to ask your opinion on something because there is an event that might jump to the front of the line just about. And we'll talk about that first before getting into these other things here. And that would be the possibility of joining Sharon and me on what we're calling, and what Lipkin Tours is calling, a solidarity mission with the State of Israel. As you know, we've moved our Israel tour from March to November already because of the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, and the fact that it looks like things may even escalate. As I'm recording this on the afternoon Central Time U.S. on Friday, February 2nd, news broke this afternoon of airstrikes by the United States against militant sites inside Syria and perhaps even elsewhere connected to the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, believed to be responsible for the deadly attack against a U.S. outpost in Jordan called Tower 22 last Sunday morning, in which 3 U.S. soldiers were killed and more than 40 injured, some with traumatic brain injuries. So this obviously has an impact on the security of our tour. There are places, for example, in the north of Israel that we have been before and would like to go again. Caesarea Philippi in particular, which is part of that zone that's been evacuated. Some 80,000 Israelis still away from their homes in the north because they're just too close to Hezbollah for them to be secure. So, but this solidarity mission would probably be in the May timeframe. It would be a small group, 20 to 30 people only. It would be 7-day, 6-night accommodations in Jerusalem at a 4-star hotel. That is still secure and safe. That would involve visiting some key locations connected to the October 7th attack, like the site of the Nova Music Festival, visiting the town of Sderot in the Negev, where the police headquarters was besieged and overrun. One of the kibbutz, or kibbutzim, that was attacked, having a barbecue with IDF soldiers just to meet them, talk with them. We'd also go to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. This is really just about bearing witness to what has happened there and then being able to share that with our friends and families when we come back home. Would you be interested in this? We've not made a firm decision yet as to whether we are going to do this. Obviously, this escalation this weekend by the U.S. Following last weekend's attack on that U.S. outpost in Jordan may have an impact on things. We're just trying to gauge a level of interest. The cost, according to Lipkin Tours, would be about $1,950. That's $1,950 U.S., and that is for the land package only. In other words, the time in Israel. That does not include airfare to and from Tel Aviv. This would also be a blessing to Lipkin Tours and to the economy of Israel, which frankly is really struggling right now. Out of 9 million people, about 1 million have been called up into the reserves, including CEO Aaron Lipkin of Lipkin Tours, and at least one of his tour guides that we are aware of, and some family members of his. The archaeologist, they spent a day with us at Gilgal Rephaim back in March of last year, is also now with the reserves. So just trying to get a gauge on this. Is this something you would be interested in? You can drop me an email, derek@gilberthouse.org, derek at gilberthouse.org. Again, this would probably be in May, so it's a fairly quick turnaround. And we understand that will also have some impact on the level of interest. SkyWatch TV's virtual conference, as we discussed with Joe Horn, that's coming up in just a couple of weeks. February 29th, it will launch 90 days access, 90 days, a period to sign up. But once you sign up, beginning February 29th, you will have 90 days to view the videos, the presentations. And this includes access to all 6 feature-length SkyWatch Films documentaries. I think, obviously, the big selling point is that this is Tom Horn's last presentation. He recorded this last fall before he took ill in October and was called home by the Lord. But in addition to Tom Horn's final presentation, you've got Rabbi Jonathan Kahn, Pastor Carl Gallups, Dr. Judd Burton, Rabbi Zev Porat, Sharon and me, of course, Kenny C., Pastor Casper McLeod, Dr. Mike Spalding, Dr. Igal German, Vicki Joy Anderson, and more. And you can find that out. Find all of the information and a place to register at defenderconference.com. And if you register by February 15th, you get a $10 early bird discount. Registration normally $95 for all of this content. Again, 24 presentations plus 6 feature-length documentaries and a $10 early bird discount to register by February 15th. The first weekend in April, we will be in Dallas for the Prophetic Signs in the Heavenlies Conference. This is Hear the Watchman, Mike Kerr and Jeannie Moore. It's at the Hilton DFW Lakes Conference Center in Grapevine, Texas, close to the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Price for registration for early birds to sign up was just $35. That will increase, and I've got to double check the date on that, but you can find all that information at hearthewatchmen.com. Speakers include, yours truly, of course, Paul Begley, Colonel David Giamona, Pastor Casper McLeod, David Hebner, Dr. Carrie Mayday, Dave Hodges, Michael Bodea, Tuv Rose, look forward to meeting him, John Moore, David Paxton, Doug Thornton, and more. And again, find out more information and how long that early $35 registration lasts at hearthewatchmen.com. And of course, if you stay through Monday, April 8th, you can watch the total eclipse of the sun as it crosses the United States. Dallas is right in the path, so perfect place to join us for that. In June, we'll be at His Call Ministries in Sparta, Missouri. That's June 21st through 23rd. Sharon and me just speaking all weekend. The theme of this year's appearance or weekend retreat at the Finley River Ranch with His Call Ministries is The Gates of Hell, which is the title of our forthcoming book. That'll be out in the fourth quarter of this year. And so that research is very top of mind, and that will be the theme of the weekend, June 21st through 23rd, Friday night, Saturday, and then Sunday morning at His Call Ministries, the Finley River Ranch in Sparta, Missouri. More information at hiscallministries.com. In July, the Go Therefore Conference, Harvest Revival Center, Brookville, which is suburban Dayton, Ohio. Dr. Michael Lake, L.A. Marzulli, Pastor Paul Begley, Dr. Greg Reed, the guy who keeps getting us in trouble here on this channel, Pastor Carl Gallups, Dr. Judd Burton, and more. And it's a wonderful facility, and the team there at Harvest Revival Center really makes us feel like we are family. So please join us for that one, July 26th and 27th. Information and registration at gothereforeconference.com. And then the final weekend in October 27th and 28th, I think. Or 27. Well, anyway, it's the final weekend in October. The Nephilim Anthropology Conference in Scotland. Details still forthcoming, but I have agreed to speak there, and we're looking forward to getting back over to Scotland to visit that land, the land of Sharon's ancestors, and some of mine as well. I have some Frakes ancestry, which makes me a distant cousin to Jonathan Frakes. Number 1 from Star Trek Next Generation. Kind of an unusual surname, but I believe there is a Scottish connection there. So we're looking forward to getting back over there. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk with you about, besides our specials on DVDs for the months of February and March, we're just blowing out all of our DVDs 75% off. We are now launching, thanks to a new partnership with Nick Fisher at Kevlar Joe's Coffee, a line of Gilbert House Ministries branded and blended coffees. And there are 3. We just received these in the mail today. We'll be brewing these up this weekend and reporting on them. We've had some of their coffee in the past, some of the Camp Herman blend, the Bigfoot blend, and wonderful, wonderful stuff from Kevlar Joe's. We've got 3 blends that we are offering. This is the amazing Grace blend, so named for Grace, the rescue dog. And like her with her black and white coat, this is a cookies and cream blend, a medium blend with the taste of cookies and cream. Snarling Dachshund, inspired by Sam T. Dachshund, who sadly, he lived a good, long, healthy life. He was about 20 years old when he finally passed. But Snarling Dachshund blend, which is also a medium roast, but this is a Sumatran bean, which is really, really good. If you've had Sumatran coffee, very mellow, full-bodied, but mellow. And so we're looking forward to that. And then one especially for the bunker here, because we run on caffeine here at Gilbert House, and especially here in the bunker, Derek's Bunker Buster. This is a dark roast Colombian, and this is guaranteed to get you up and moving in the morning. And so we are proud to partner with Kevlar Joe's Coffee, American-owned, veteran-owned, and operated, and also from here in our home state of Missouri. So you'll find links to Kevlar Joe's at our store, gilberthouse.org/store, or you can go to Kevlar Joe's Coffee as well online and take advantage of these. It smells wonderful. Coffee always does. The proof will be in the cup. And again, we just received these today. We'll be brewing these up and reporting back to you in the days ahead. Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to watch or listen wherever you are consuming this podcast. If it's, again, video, YouTube, thank you very much. Please download our app. If you're listening online to any of the podcast sites like Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, wherever else fine podcasts are sold, thank you, and we'd appreciate if you take a moment to give us a review or a rating. Our announcer, the inimitable DC Good, and A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. We do this because we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Good night, Oliver, wherever you are. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.